Again, welcome to the purpose of this book with your hosts, David G and David G. And we are picking up on page 141. So, first of all, thank you to Kathy for sitting in for me again last week. I've been a traveling fool. I was roughing it in the Caribbean last week on a cruise when you guys were all in snow and cold. So, you're welcome for me rubbing that in. So thank you, Kathy. And David, you said that we got through 141 paragraph 3. So we're on bottom paragraph. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Any table to set before we dive in?
Yeah, I think what we're going to see tonight, as I previewed this earlier today, is we read this chapter to employers, and I mentioned this early on. I mentioned every week. This could be read to sponsors also. This is a good. I just identify with it if I want to look at it as chapter to sponsors, and I'm not trying to rewrite the big book. The big book is perfect just the way it is. It has precise, clear-cut directions in it, and I don't need to change any of that. But I just sometimes want to relate to it in a different way. The same way as we take statements in the big book and we turn them into questions so we can personalize them. So that's just what I'm doing when I read this chapter here. I'm taking a whole chunk of it, a whole bunch of it, and changing it over to sponsors. And when I think about what sponsors look like, and I got this from Joe Hawk, so I like to give credit when I can remember where credit is due. And Emily and I were talking about Mark Houston before, and David and Rob and I, we were all talking about Joe Hawk's another one of those guys, that just is so versed in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and just gives me so much knowledge of his experience with the book. He talks about this, and this is the kind of the format, blueprint that I use as a sponsor when I approach a new person. And I'm relating this as though I'm reading this chapter to sponsors. So what I do when I get an approach a new guy and he says, would you sponsor me? Or I say, hey, do you need a sponsor? I say something like this. There's four things that I'm going to ask him. The first thing is that I'm going to ask him, are you done good and for all? And of course they're going to say yes, right? Yeah, without a doubt. And maybe they won't, but most of the time they do. And then they said, are you willing to go to any lengths? And then I said, but don't answer that. Consider what I'm going to say to you, because what I'm going to ask you to do is that we study this book together in all the steps. And we're going to follow the specific, the precise, and the clear cut directions in this book. And we're going to get you to a power greater than yourself so you can recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. And I try to take my time so they can comprehend what I'm saying there, because this is beyond human aid. And then the third thing is, why do you want to do this work? And a lot of times I've had this said to me because I need to get my wife back on my job. And I said, dude, I can't help you with that. I can't promise you that can happen here. But if you want to do this work because you're a real alcoholic and you are the hopeless variety, then let's do this work. And then let's see what God has planned for you in your relationships with human beings going forward. And the last one is, why me? Maybe you see me at meetings and I spew out a bunch of stuff out of the big book. And I feel like the thing about what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me, and is I'm sure it's done this for you also, is giving me two lives in one. The
Mm.
life I lived before I got sober and the spiritual life that I live now. And it's not segmented into different areas like my job life, my relationship with my wife or my kids or my grandkids or any of that stuff. It is under the
Mm.
umbrella of the spirit of the universe, the creation of the universe, God. I have a personal relationship with them. And if you want that, this book will give you that if you do this thing honestly and thoroughly. So I just wanted to set that up a little bit to so I can have a great understanding and be able to relate, because I'm always looking for ways to relate and not look for differences, looking for similarities. That's it, David.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to pick up on the bottom of, excuse me, bottom paragraph on 141. But I was just noticing that the first sentences state that you know about his drinking. So I think it's worth me just rereading the two short paragraphs before to
Sure.
reset the context about who the his is, who's the kind of person we're talking about, right? So if we go just two small paragraphs up, it says, but there are many men who want to stop, and with them you can go far. Your understanding treatment of the cases will pay dividends. Perhaps you have such a man in mind. So, a man who wants to stop, right? He wants to quit drinking, and you want to help him, even if it be only a matter of good business. You know now more about alcoholism. You can see that he's mentally and physically sick. You're willing to overlook his past performances. Suppose an approach is made something like this. Okay, now's the new content. State that you know about his drinking and that it must stop. You might say you appreciate his abilities, would like to keep him, but cannot if he continues to drink. A firm attitude at this point has helped many of us.
Anything, Brett? Okay. All right, so I'm going to read as I looked at this page and on page 142 and 143. This is kind of like a 12-part intervention. This is a way, and I'll point out all 12 parts in here. So the first sentence in that paragraph that David read is state that you know all about his drinking, that he must stop. So that's the first part of this intervention, that I'm aware of his drinking as the employer right now. And then the second part here is you might say you appreciate his abilities, would like to help, but cannot if he continues to drink. So I'm going to state some cold hard facts. I'm painting a picture for him, good and bad. And then it says a firm attitude at this point has helped many of us. So uh, and now if I read this chapter, or I'm going to wait a second before I get to that to the next paragraph. So I'm going to back up here. So I'm just looking at this as a 12-part intervention. I pointed out the first two, and it comes kind of quickly in the next couple pages. So just follow along with us and see if you can relate.
Yeah, and then a really pretty simple little paragraph. I don't think I have anything to add there. So top of 142. Next, he can be assured that you do not intend to lecture, moralize, or condemn. That if this was done formerly, it was because of misunderstanding. If possible, express a lack of hard feeling toward him. At this point, it might be well to explain alcoholism, the illness. Say that you believe he is a gravely ill person with this qualification. Being perhaps fatally ill, does he want to get well? You ask because many alcoholics, being warped and drugged, do not want to quit. But does he? Will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever?
I have moralize, which is to improve or reform the character or conduct of.
Hmm.
Condemn is criticize, disapprove of. Let's see. Gravely is fatal.
Hmm.
And warped, disturbingly strange, abnormal, or distorted.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.
So in this paragraph here, so now, as I pointed out, the 12-part intervention that these next couple of pages talk about, in the first paragraph, in the first sentence, it says, next, he can be assured that you do not intend to lecture, moralize, or condemn. If this was done formally, is because of the misunderstanding. So that is the third part of the intervention. And if we go back to the book and there's a solution on page 18, Bill references that early on. You know, he references it in the 10 conditions of looking for a sponsor. I mean, although sponsor wasn't a relevant term back in 1939 when the big book was published, it is a relevant term today for sure, because I really do need a big book sponsor. I need someone to be accountable to. So if you don't mind, go to page 18 if you want to bounce around the book with us in the fifth paragraph. So the paragraph prior to that I will not read, but it's definitely worth the look at because it is in italic writing. And if you follow Joe and Charlie, squiggly writing is important. So it's like a neon sign. We should really pay attention to it. But what I'm trying to do is look at similarities in the book that Bill wrote about earlier on, page 18, fifth paragraph. That man who is making the approach. So I am making the approach to the new person. I am not waiting for the new person to approach me. Why? Because they probably are not going to. They need to be triaged right away. And I am what we're going to find out here. Here's some of the conditions or the qualities of my sobriety should look like. So the man who is making the approach has had the same difficulty. Look, that's number one condition. That he obviously knows what he's talking about. That's number two. That his whole deportment, my behavior, that's number three, shouts to the new prospect that he's a man with a real answer. That's number four. That he is no attitude of holier than thou. That is number 5. Nothing except the sincere desire to be helpful is number 6. That there are no fees to pay, 7. No access to grind is 8. No people to please is 9. And then to relate to what Bill just wrote here, I'm on page 142. No lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. So those are 10 conditions as we're into the 12 parts of an intervention. And then back to the text that we're at tonight on page 142, first paragraph, says then that if this was done formally, it's become a misunderstanding. And here's the 4th intervention. If possible, express a lack of hard feelings toward him. Like, tell the truth, man. Why are we don't sugarcoat this. If you're the employer, your company's being affected by his neglect of showing up at work or showing up drunk or whatever the case may be. But even as the sponsee, I need to tell him the truth about this whole thing. When he doesn't show up on time, when he blows off a meeting that we have scheduled, all those things are really important to me. Those are called disciplines. And I'm trying to be spiritually disciplined by working the steps. And I have to be, as a sponsor, be a demonstration in their life. When I say I'm going to do something, I pretty much, for the most part, I do it. So I expect the same thing from them. I don't have very high expectations, but those are some of them. So if possible, express a lack of hard feelings toward him. At this point, it might well be explain alcohol's the illness. That's number 5. So if I know how to, if I won't do it because I don't want to take up all our time, and I want David to be able to share too, and I don't want to steal all the fun parts of the book from him also. But page 44, first paragraph, right? That is a good qualifying paragraph. When I start to drink, can I control the amount I drink? And once I stop, can I stay stopped? And is only a spiritual experience is what's going to help me. I need to know those answers. And then it says that you believe that he is gravely ill person. Why do I know that? Because I've studied the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and so has the employer, so has the sponsor. This is not one of those things like take your time, honey, and work the steps. This is not what they're saying here at all. They're talking about getting qualified and finding out that you have a fatal illness, and you are fatal meaning dead, like you're going to die. And then it says being perhaps fatally ill. Does he want to get well? That is number 6. You ask because many alcoholics being warped and drugged do not want to quit. So are you willing to go to any lengths? Page 58 of the big book and how it works. Are you willing to go? What does that look like? That means, are you going to be honest and thorough and do this work? You can do this work with me shoulder to shoulder. I will not abandon you from this work. And then it says, but does he? Question mark. Number 7 part of the intervention. Will he take necessary steps, submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever? Again, this is about going to any lengths. And real briefly, because again, I want David to jump in. I don't want to make this the David Glasgow hour. That's so not fun. But when I was in the psych ward, and I had that moment of clarity where God froze the liar in me enough to see the truth, and I called someone in AA and asked them for help. I'm behind a door that I ain't getting out of. I called someone for help, and that moment of clarity where God froze the liar in me, I was willing to go to any lengths. I have to continue that process. I can't let that stop at that door of that psych ward once I get out, because my external world starts to get a little bit better, and that happens to a lot of us. Because this is he talked about this as a fatal illness, an internal illness, and the solution is internal.
Thanks, man. So back on 142, so you do not intend to lecture, moralize, or condemn. Well, I would say as an employer or as a sponsor, odds are pretty good I'm not going to moralize or condemn. My commitment not to lecture, we'll see. I know I'm not supposed to. I'm just being truthful about I know who I am, right? There's a couple times in the book it says we're not going to lecture, and that's certainly my intent, right? But this is the case. What's happening here is that we're encouraging the employer to have a frank and open conversation with his alcoholic employee. So we're setting it up that hopefully the alcoholic's receptive. So we say, listen, dude, I'm not going to lecture you. I'm not going to say you're a bad guy, anything like this. If I did it before, sorry, I didn't understand your problem, right? I mean, this is just sort of man-to-man, human-to-human conversation. if possible, express a lack of hard feeling, which might be difficult, right? Just like a family member. We've probably done a lot of damage to our employers in the same way that we did to our family. And so that's a big ask, and that's a real spiritual moment for an employer that hopefully is healthier than the alcoholic to be able to sort of like let the bygones be bygones, at least in the moment. And then, so the next direction, is, well, explain alcoholism as an illness, because the assumption is the alcoholic doesn't understand this. And now this employer who is not afflicted with this illness has read the book to this point at least and has a passing understanding that he can educate the alcoholic. Say that you believe he's gravely ill. Say that he's a gravely ill person, with this qualification, perhaps being fatally ill. Does he want to get well? So gravely, Brett gave us that, right? We know what grave means, deadly. Fatal, we know what fatal means, deadly. This goes back to one of my favorite paragraphs in the book. Let's just bounce for bounce's sake. Let's go to page 66, first full paragraph, where we're talking about our real problem. Is my real problem alcoholism or alcohol and cocaine? No. Are they problems? Absolutely. What's my real problem? The unmanageability of my life, my spiritual sickness, which in this alcoholic and addict, pointing at myself, how it expressed itself more than in any other way was through resentment. Man, was I full of resentments. Oh my God. So what did the book tell us about resentments? It says it's plain little life, which includes deep resentment, which is the only resentments I had. I did not have shallow passing resentments. I only had deep resentments. Plain little life, which includes deep resentment, leads only to futility and unhappiness. So no point and very sad guy, miserable guy. To the precise, exact extent that we permit these resentments, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? So all I did was permit resentments to run rampant in my life. And so all I did was squander the hours that could have been otherwise productive and happy. But with the alcoholic, whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, what? This business of resentment is infinitely grave. Again, grave, going to die. These resentments are going to kill me. We found that it is fatal. To double down. It's telling me a second time these resentments are going to kill me. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. I shut myself off from my higher power. The insanity of alcohol returns. We drink again. With us, to drink is to die. 3 times in that paragraph. Do you think Bill's trying to make a point that resentments, which are born out of unmanageability, born out of my spiritual malady, are going to kill me, right? And then the next paragraph, real quick. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. They may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for the alcoholics, these things are poison. What does poison do? It kills us. 4 times in 2 small paragraphs. This thing kills. I ask this every few weeks or so. Those of you guys know this who study with us. Anybody here lose anyone to alcoholism, drug addiction, thing like that? Yeah. Look at how many hands. Isn't that terrible, guys? Terrible. David has lost several close family members. Oh, my best friend from high school, my best friend from college, and sadly, many people in the rooms of recovery who weren't recovered, right? People that we went to meetings with, some guys in different home groups that David and I have attended, right? This thing kills. So going back to 142, paragraph 1, right? We got to help this alcoholic. Everybody needs to help the alcoholic, the addict, the obsessive, whatever whatever you're powerless over, right? Whatever fellowship you're from, there's something that's killing you, right? Just like alcohol and cocaine and some other things were killing me. I needed someone to explain that to me. I didn't know, right? So you ask, because many alcoholics being warped and drugged do not want to quit. But does he? And remember, back in Two Wives, we had those great 4 types of alcoholics. And there was one, I think it was type 2, that want to stop, right? So does this guy want to stop? That's okay. We can get started on that. You don't even have to have graduated to wanting to stop. Wanting to want is good enough that we can start to move forward. And then David ran through all these things, but does he? Does he? Does he really want, or as many wants as you want to put in there? Want, whatever. Will he take every necessary step? Is he going to be thorough and honest? Submit to anything to get well, to stop drinking forever. And I don't know if David mentioned this. I've heard him say this a million times. I know you mentioned part of it when people ask him to sponsor them, take through the steps. He's got a little questionnaire, right? He mentioned this. But one of the big things is like I got this from David, is I didn't used to do this. I'm like, what are you unwilling to do? And if a guy names anything, then I'm like, I don't know if I can help you. Because if a guy's like, well, I don't want to I don't want to staple my foot to the floor, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to ask you to do that, but would you do that if you were never going to drink again and you weren't going to obsess over drinking again? And I want to know what the response is, right? Think about this, guys. What are we asked to do to get better, right? Find God, find a new relationship with God, clean up the wreckage of our past, and then serve all of God's kids, right? It's work the 12 steps, live the 12 steps, especially the daily disciplines at 10, 11, and 12. Once we get recovered, be in service, carrying the message, and maybe a little general service, maybe something in your group, whatever, and be a part of the fellowship. That's it. That is all. Guys, what if you came to your first 12-step recovery meeting and they were like, okay, step 1, admit you're powerless, da-da-da. And then step 2, find a stranger and kill him in an alley. And they say, but if you do this, if you commit murder, you're never going to drink again. I would have been like, right? What if step 3 was walk on hot coals and step 4 was swallow broken glass? Like, wouldn't you have considered any crazy idea if you really believed it was going to get you and keep you sober? I would have, because I couldn't do it. It never occurred to me that I was going to ever have a problem that I couldn't overcome. This was the first one. I couldn't outmuscle this. I couldn't outthink this. I couldn't outrun this. I couldn't outcheat this, right? This thing whipped me, right? And this is the message that we need to send to the alcoholic. Will he take every necessary step? Will he submit to anything to get well? And don't make anybody swallow broken glass or walk on hot coals. Those are just jokes, but they do have to submit to everything in our program of recovery, withholding nothing. This is not a buffet. This is not an a la carte menu, right? It's a price fix. You get all 12 courses, and the price you got to pay is the sacrifice of self. Because then what do we get? Well, we're going to stop drinking forever, right? Get that. That's the little mint I get with the check at the end of the meal. Moving on, next paragraph. If he says yes, does he really mean it? Or down inside, does he think he is fooling you? Sorry, I just can't. Sorry about that. And sorry, let me start over again here. If he says yes, does he really mean it? Or down inside, does he think he's fooling you? And that after rest and treatment, after rest and treatment, he'll be able to get away with a few drinks now and then. We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points. Be satisfied he is not deceiving himself or you.
I have one: deceiving, believing something false or misleading.
Thank you, Brett. Yeah, so this paragraph here, I think it's such a valid paragraph, because when I'm looking at this paragraph, maybe I've worked with this guy before. And I have a lot of guys who maybe have gone back out and relapsed, and I'm not surprised by that. Alcoholics drink. Never surprised by that. They drink. And untreated alcoholism, I'm picking up a drink. I'm one bad idea from picking up a drink. Maybe not today or right now. I need to stay spiritually fit. And if they don't continue to do all this work, and they do step 8.5, that's as far as they get, I'm almost going to guarantee that if that's as far as they got, they're probably going to pick up a drink eventually, because I have to finish all my amends. And then I also have to live in the disciplines of 10 and 11 and 12. And I shouldn't even use the word have to. I get to do that, because what the result of that is freedom from the bondage itself. That is what my real problem is. And Bill, And his glory, as he writes our big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, tells us all about the mind and the body in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. But he doesn't even tell us what our real problem is until page 62. So it's like 70 pages, including the doctor's opinion. Then he starts telling us that we're selfish and self-centered, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. Oh my God, that's 400 things blocking me from the power of God. So how am I ever going to get well if I don't get free of that? And that's what the steps are perfectly designed to get rid of for me, to get a relationship with power. So and back to this paragraph. If he says yes, does he really mean it? Or down inside, does he think he is fooling you? So that thing, isn't that really my problem? It's not, today I don't have a drink problem. I just have a think problem. Is he fooling you? And is he fooling you? And that after rest and treatment, he will be able to get away with a few drinks now and then. That goes back to my point, what I said in the last paragraph. Externally, my world gets a little bit better. I get back on the job. I make the border crossing with mama in the bed. Things are going a little bit better in my life. I got a couple bucks in the bank. Those are all external circumstances. Those are not, that is not spiritual, that is not me being relieved of the spiritual malady. And in the back of my mind, I have what is called a reservation, which I can't have one of those things either. That somehow someday I'll be able to pick up a drink and drink like a normal person. That's delusion. It's and we talk about that too on page 60 or 58 of the big book and how it works. But it's also now and then is also a reference to in the doctor's opinion on page Roman numeral 28, and the doctor talks us that we can't differentiate the true from the false. He doesn't even know. Are you kidding me? I didn't know when I first got sober if I was never going to drink again. I just answered the question because I was a hopeless alcoholic. And boy, I fed off of that. Like I told my man, I did everything my sponsor asked me to do. And it wasn't in the terms that David pointed out. I know they were all jokes. But what he asked me to do was so reasonable. Study this big book with him and go through this work. Pray every single day. And he asked me to call him every day. I do not ask my sponsees to call me every day. I have too many of them for me to pick up the phone. RJ will tell you I didn't call him back today. So I'll call him back tomorrow. And but if you're in a crisis, let me know that and I will call you back right away. I will make time for you. So so we're talking about the lie that I'll be able to get away with a few drinks now and then. Well, because I know about alcoholism now that that this obsession will kill any logic when I need it the most. It just does. It just kills all logic when I need it the most. And that's what an obsession does, without my permission, without my consent. And then I pick up a drink and I break out in craving. So back to the text here. We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points. I'm going to ask some questions. Let's bounce around the big book again. Let's go to working with others. What a fine chapter that is. Some great directions on how to work with another alcoholic, in case I don't know how. And that's on page 91 in the third paragraph. And it actually continues on, but I'm only going to read the one paragraph because Bill likes to have run-on paragraphs sometimes, and I'm not afraid of that. I like reading them. See your man alone. That is an approach reference on page 190 or 91, third paragraph, if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. These are my directions on how to work with a new guy. I try to follow these to the T. I really do. And after a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If I find out exactly, if he's so fixated on the wife and the kids and all these other things, I'm going to steer the conversation another way. I'm going to point out to him that alcohol is a real problem in his life, or drugs is a real problem in his life. And what he really suffers from is a spiritual malady. And I'll explain that all to him again, because I probably already did, but he needs to be refreshed. Constantly, I need to be refreshed of this. This is why we call this a textbook, and it's not meant to be read and studied. So back to page 91 in the third paragraph. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to the time you quit. So this is my opportunity to show him what my life was like before I got sober, and that I had no power, no choice, no control. And my life was horribly unmanageable because I was managing it. And then, but say nothing on the moment of how you accomplished it. So going to leave that out there. what my bottom looked like. And my bottom, just so you guys know, well, it was kind of a weenie bottom, but it was like, I realized this is my life and it's never going to get any better than this. And again, like I said, God froze a liar in me long enough to reach out and ask somebody in AA for help. And I haven't stopped doing that. The liar has been frozen to me for the most part on a minute by minute basis, because I can't do this alone, nor do I need to. And then it says, say nothing accomplished. If he has a serious mood, dwell in the troubles liquor has caused you. So I'm not glamorizing, when it was fun, because dude, it wasn't all bad. It wasn't. But I'll tell you what, most of the bad outweighs the good 1,000 to 1. For real. And then it says, if a serious mood, dwell in trouble liquor has caused you, being careful not to. Oh, we're going to have another reference of moralize and lecture. Third time in the book. Bill's making his point again. Love that, Bill. So moralize or lecture. If his moods like, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his. And so this is how I'm going to get to know the guy a little bit better. And this is about me building a relationship with another human being, because we're going to do this work shoulder to shoulder. And I want him to understand the first word and the first step says we. And he came in as an I. I came in as an I. And he never has to leave as and we want him to come back. It's one thing to get here, but I want to make him feel safe so he can come back and let him understand, be able to, did I drink like my sponsor? Did I think like my sponsor? And did I feel like my sponsor? Like, I want him to look for similarities and not differences when we talk. And I'll point these things out over and over and over again in our relationship. And then I'll also point out what I do on a regular basis. I get up in the morning, I hit my knees, humble myself in front of my creator, not because my God is an egomaniac, because I need to remind myself that God is everything, not nothing, that he is all powerful. I am not. I don't have the power to keep myself sober, or for certain not to manage my own life. So that's the humbleness that I have to provide by getting on my knees and doing that. So and then he says and then it says that we believe a man should be, back to 142, second paragraph, is David Aretas. We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points, be satisfied he is not deceiving himself for you. So the best of my ability. I mean, I can't tell. I'm not hooking him up to a polygraph. Not my job. I'm hoping that he's telling the truth. But here's how I'm going to know if he's telling the truth. When he sticks to the appointments. So I try to take guys through the work real quickly. Couple 3-4 weeks tops, get them through all 12 steps. And I got a couple new guys right now. One guy's kind of slacking a little bit. And what I do is because we're going to talk about willingness here. I'm going to talk about willingness real briefly here. So willingness, in my dictionary, says is the quality of state of being prepared to do something. So do something, it's a little bit more urgent than that. But when I get a new guy, I make sure he gets a big book. And in the front of the big book, I said, I want you to have your sobriety date on that blank page. In the very front of the book, put your sobriety date. And then the next ledger, in the ledger I want you to write is the day. I said, are you willing to go to any lengths? And you say, yeah. I said, I want you to put today's date. Because in a month from now, 6 months from now, or 5 years from now, I'm going to find out that you're not willing to go to any links right anymore, that you haven't been in enough meetings, you're not really sponsoring anybody, that you're not praying, you're not going to meetings on a regular basis. I'm going to say, go back to the front of the book. What happened between now and then? And it wasn't one instance. It was a gradual process or a quick process of something you stopped doing. Why aren't you still willing to go to any lengths? And because I have a God who is so loving, caring, and timely in my life, and puts all you lovely people in my life, he keeps me super busy. And the one thing I would say about busy is the most wonderful thing I've ever experienced in my life. I love busy because I don't think too little of myself or too much of myself. It's all I do is think of myself. And when I'm busy, I don't have time to think of myself. I have a great career, which is my vocation. And then I have an avocation, so remember, Bill and Lois made this their vocation. They work with others from the time to Bill's death. We don't have that luxury necessarily because we got to provide for our families. But my avocation is to help others, and I get to do that. And we're chosen to do that, to save lives. And is an amazing experience, the feeling that you have. And somehow, some way, I always have the time to do that kind of stuff because I prioritize what's important in God's world, not David's world.
I think you said it all, man. Yeah, I just want to recognize, back on this paragraph here, I've had this experience many times. I'm certain many of you have as well, where if he says yes, does he really mean it? Or down inside, does he think he's fooling you? And really the last sentence is key. Be satisfied he's not deceiving himself or you. How does he even know? How does the newcomer even know? He's able to be honest with me or himself. I don't know. And David brought up reservations. I think a lot of people come in with reservations. I did very early on. I think I abandoned them by my 38th day when I asked the guy to sponsor me. That was a big milestone early for me in recovery. But these reservations, I just always think of one story. So when I was getting sober in downtown Chicago, and there was a treatment center that I'd go to every Friday for a bridge group. And there was this guy, real smart guy. He just asked a lot of questions and stuff. And we're talking about, hey, this is a stop drinking forever way of life. And he's like, you mean to say that when my daughter gets married, I can't even have a glass of champagne? You want to know how old this guy's daughter was at the time he asked this question? Two. Two. This guy was thinking about 16 to 25 years later, was he going to be able to have a glass of wine at his daughter's wedding? That's a stupid, crazy, realistic reservation. I mean, I probably laughed at the time, but I get it. I get it. When I was thinking when I came in, because I came in looking for help with narcotics, cocaine, and pills and things that I felt were a bigger problem for me. Like I took me a little bit to recognize my alcoholism, right? And so when I was coming into recovery, though, he was going to a few fellowships, including AA, and I wasn't drinking, but I wasn't fully convinced in my first few weeks. And I was just like, what am I going to do? Like, not even beer? Like, what am I supposed to drink when I eat pizza or chicken wings? Like Diet Coke? What? Like, I just couldn't fathom a life where I didn't at least drink beer, right? Crazy reservations. All right, 142, third paragraph. Whether you mention this book, Alcoholics Anonymous, is a matter for your discretion. If he temporizes and still thinks he can ever drink again, even beer, so funny, I was just saying that, even beer, he might as well be discharged after the next bender, which, if an alcoholic, he's almost certain to have. He should understand that emphatically. Either you are dealing with a man who can and will get well, or you are not. If not, why waste time with him? This may seem severe, but it is usually the best course.
I have temporizes, it's controlled drinking.
Mm.
That's a good
And
definition, Brett.
yeah, and let's just recognize how discharged is being used here. That means fired. Let me jump in here, David.
Oh,
So,
please.
so what they're saying, again, more direction to the employers. Okay, so you're talking to this guy, you're telling him what you've learned about alcoholism is an illness. You're laying it on the line. You're asking him, hey man, do you want to be done, good and for all? And then we're making an assessment. Say, do I believe this guy? Do I believe he's telling me the truth? But more importantly, do I believe he's telling himself the truth? Right. So then, whether you want to bring up this book or give him your copy or give him an extra copy, um, your call. But if he still wants to try to control drinking, that was an awesome definition. Thank you, Brett. And still thinks he can ever drink again, even beer. May as well fire him after the next bender, right? Cut this guy loose. Give him some circumstances, which might give him a new perspective and maybe will bring him in. Right. I frequently go to in the third step in the 12 and 12. It says, so it is by circumstance rather than by any virtue that we're driven into AA. This problem, David talks about this all the time. The whole problem's inside of me, right? It's in my head, my heart, and my gut. But it's the external stuff that's all haywire. I feel awful inside, but I'm used to how awful I feel. There's always some circumstance that forces me in here, right? And for some people, it's losing their job, right? Um, so if he's an alcoholic, he's gonna have the next bender, so fire him. He should understand that emphatically, right? That this is it, no more chances. So either you're dealing with a man who can and get well, or you're not. And if not, why waste time with him? May seem severe, but it's usually the best course. And again, best course because number one, again, this is two employers, got a business to run, right? In this day and back, they're just talking about profits and stuff. This is a very different time, 1939 versus today. Like today, we got all sorts of other liabilities and things to worry about, inappropriate behavior on the job, and all these HR matters that, listen, back in 1939, when you're the boss, you had a secretary, you pat her on the butt, and that was just how men and women interacted. And it was just like, well, what were you going to do? If I patted one of my female employees on the butt, my three partners would have me out of this business overnight. I'd be done, right? Like no kind of nothing is acceptable today, right? So you got to get this guy out of your business before you got a lawsuit, before he kills somebody, drives a forklift into some poor shipping clerk. God knows what could happen, right? RJ's a truck driver, right? You were probably a menace on the road, I'm assuming, before you got recovered, right? I mean, how many guys? I was never a professional driver, but I'll tell you, I may as well have been paid to drink and drive because I acted like it was my job. And thank God I never killed anybody, least of all myself, most of all another human being, right? And really, this is my perspective on sponsoring too. Somebody's not all in, I tell them to get lost. David and I differ on this a little bit. I think David never ever really tells anybody to split. He'll say you should go look for another sponsor. But I just tell people to split because I only got so much time, right? And I'm not going to be the guy that you can just keep coming back to every time you decide to drink again when you're not following direction. There's just some other human being that wants my help. I got 24 hours in a day, and I can't waste 15 minutes on you when you call me drunk again. When you just got back from the crack house again. I've sponsored a lot of guys like that, and I just don't do it anymore. I'm here. I'll meet you at a meeting, right? Take you through the work, but you got to work harder than me. Like most of the time I say you got to work as hard. I don't know. I think you got to work harder than me. I'm in cruise control now. I'm in the daily disciplines of 10, 11, and 12 because I'm recovered. I'm staying recovered, and I'm growing. But man, it was a hell of a lot harder at the beginning to get sober. First year was tough for me, right? Got to work hard. Go ahead, David.
And I apologize. I said I was going to talk about the 12 parts of this intervention that the employer has given to the employee here, and I stopped at 6, which was in page 142 in the first paragraph, halfway down the page, where right after the hyphen, where it says qualification being perhaps fatally ill. Does he want to get well? That was the number 6 qualifier, 12 part of the intervention. And then in the next, the bottom of that, the last sentence on that is number 7. Will he take every necessary step, submit to anything to get well, and stop drinking forever? That's number 7. And then the next paragraph altogether is number 8. If he says yes, does he really mean it, or down inside does he think he's fooling you, and that after rest and treatment he will be able to get away with a few drinks now and then? We believe a man should be thoroughly probed on these points, be satisfied he's not deceiving himself or you. And then number 9 is in this paragraph. Whether you mention this book is a matter of your discretion. Here it is. Here's the 9th. If he temporizes and still thinks he can ever drink again, even beer, he might as well be discharged. So that's the 9th part of the intervention. Let me start that first sentence. Whether you mention this big book is a matter of your discretion. I promise you this, David and I are whipping out the big book. It's coming to that first meeting. I promise you it's going to be open to a certain page, and I'm be prepared to talk about what we need to talk about. It's probably going to start on page 44 so I can qualify this man. And it just depends on the situation, how much we talked about. My big book, I never, ever go to a meeting without my big book. And if you're one of the people I get to work with, you never go to a meeting without your big book too, because I need to know the facts, be armed with the facts about the program, which that is where the program is in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So Says if he temporizes and still thinks he can drink again, even beer, he might as well be discharged. And David's right. I never said you're fired. I strongly suggested someone else go somewhere. And I got a guy who I was sponsoring over 25 years ago, and he came back into my life just recently after a 20-year hiatus from. And dude, I don't know if he's on here or not, but he is. Things have changed. Let me just put it to you that way. As you can imagine, what 20 years of drinking and drugging must look like. Wheelchair, teeth are gone, no job, no family, no money, no insurance, halfway house. And I'm saying there's hope there. That's what I'm saying. There's hope because he didn't die. And actually, we're on the path of hope. We're in the belief. We're in belief right now because we believe that God can do for us what we can't do for ourselves. And if he stays honest and thorough and does his work like he's been doing, and he's been diligent about it, and I let him know this is not, don't waste my time. Don't, because there's someone else I could be working with here. And I'm preparing him to do something that he's never did before. And maybe it was my fault back in the day. I'll take some of the responsibility because I'm preparing him to sponsor other people to carry this message as we're doing the work. And he's going to start his 4-step Friday, and I'm going to help him write off the first 2 lines. We're going to go left to right in the first 2 lines with him, and then he's going to go home and finish do column 1 up and down, column 2 up and down, column 3 up and down, and column 4. He's going to go home and he's going to do his resentments, and then we're going to set a meeting, and he's going to talk. And I'm going to listen, and I'm going to take notes. And then he's going to go home and do his fear inventory because I'm going to break it up into sections for him just because he's been around for a while and he's done it. And he's going to get to the process of trying to get free to the bottom of himself because steps 4 through 9 of the recovery portion of the program. Back to the text here. And after the next bender, which if an alcoholic is almost certain to have, he should understand that emphatically, either you're dealing with a man who can and will get well or not. Well, Bill mentions this on page 58, the can-nots and the will-nots. And I don't know about how many can-nots there are in Alcoholics Anonymous. I can't do this. No, you will not do this. I've never met a can-not. I mean, a will-not. I mean, the will-not is I can't go to the meetings. My wife won't let me go, or whatever the case is. I gotta be willing to go to any lengths. I gotta get the willingness to go to any lengths because this disease is in hiding. It's just waiting for me. So because my solution is to pick up the drink. So on page 58, it says in the first paragraph, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. Those who do not recover, people who cannot or will not, what? Completely give themselves to the simple program. No half measures. No, just don't drink between meetings. Put the plug in the jug. That kind of stuff doesn't work. Give themselves to the simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves, there are such unfortunates. They're not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They're naturally incapable of grasping and developing a manner of living, which is a way of living, which demands rigorous honesty. That is something I could not manage on my own was rigorous honesty. Couldn't until I did this work, till I did the steps. Their chances are less than average. There's hope there because that's at least 50%. Even if you can't be honest, you still got 50% chance. There are those who are suffering from grave emotional and mental disorders, but that many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. The minimum promise from working the steps in Alcoholics Anonymous is freedom from addiction. The maximum promise in Alcoholics Anonymous is freedom from unmanageability.
Complete freedom.
Complete freedom from unmanageability. So back to the text here, you're either dealing with a man who can or will get well or will not. If not, why waste time with him? And that's true. David pointed out, why would I waste my time with someone like that? I got a guy who I was sponsoring when he was 14 years old. He's like in his late 30s now, and I saw him. I'm not willing to help him. He needs to go find someone else. I didn't fire him. He just doesn't want to do the work, and I don't have the time for that nonsense. People are dying out there. I need to put my energy into something like that. And the last little sentence on there says they may seem severe, but it's usually the best course. It is the only course, not to waste volumes of time. And for the employer, as this chapter is written, they have to make a very hard decision sometimes of a very good, hardworking employee, but they're affecting the business and they have to be let go.
All right, bottom of 142. After satisfying yourself that your man wants to recover and that he will go to any extreme to do so, you may suggest a definite course of action. For most alcoholics who are drinking or who are just getting over a spree, a certain amount of physical treatment is desirable, even imperative. The matter of physical treatment should, of course, be referred to your own doctor. Whatever the method, its object is to thoroughly clear mind and body of the effects of alcohol. In competent hands, this seldom takes long, nor is it very expensive. Your man will fare better if placed in such a physical condition that he can think straight and no longer craves liquor. If you propose such a procedure to him, it may be necessary to advance the cost of treatment. But we believe it should be made plain that any expense will later be deducted from his pay. It is better for him to feel fully responsible.
I have imperative, which is necessary, needed, essential.
Thank you.
Let me go. Or you want
Yeah,
it?
go ahead.
Okay, so page 142, fourth paragraph. Here's the as you're satisfying yourself with your man wants to recover, and that he will go to any extreme to do so. We just read what that looks like on page 50 and how it works. Here's the 10th part of the intervention. You may suggest a definite course of action. What is that definite course of action? Definite. The 12 steps. I do not have to create a new mousetrap. The steps are already designed in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Then it says for most alcoholics who are drinking or who are just getting over a spree, a certain amount of physical treatment is desirable, even imperative. So that's detox. And if you're an alcoholic and you need a detox, please go do so. You can die from that. You can absolutely die from that. I'm a cocaine addict too. You cannot die from that. You're coming down from that. You can feel like crap for a really long time, or a heroin addict. You can feel like crap. You're gonna feel like you're dying, but you're not gonna die. But alcohol, please go to get detox. Then it says the matter of physical treatment should be, of course, be referred to your own doctor. Please, we're not doctors, we're not lawyers, we're psychiatrists, none of those things. Whatever the method, its object is to thoroughly clear mind and body the effects of alcohol. So that is to abstain, so the mind gets a little bit clear. But I gotta treat the mind, and I also gotta treat the spirit, and that's what the 12 steps are designed to do. And in competent hands, it seldom takes long, nor is it very expensive. So then it says, your man will fare better if he's placed in such physical condition that he can think straight and no longer craves liquor. So I just changed the wording there to obsession, because you can't crave liquor unless you are drinking liquor. If you propose such a procedure to him, it may be necessary to advance the cost of treatment. I am probably not going to advance you the cost of treatment. I will take you to the ER, and then I will come back and check on you. And I will come back and check on you. And I will come back and check on you. And then when you're done, we'll get together and have a cup of coffee, and I'll try to buy you breakfast. And then we'll go start going through the work. So, and if you're a cocaine addict or a heroin addict and you don't have $25,000 to go to treatment, why don't you just come to Cocaine Anonymous, get yourself a sponsor and a big book, and do the work and see how that works out for you, because millions of people are sober worldwide when they did it that way. So, but we believe it should be made plain that any expense will be later deducted from his pay. So, of course, the employer, they have all these programs today, and they would definitely
Yeah.
help you with that kind of stuff. It's better for him to feel fully responsible. So, yeah, he's responsible for that kind of stuff. But anyways, that's all I got on that.
Yeah, so just to drill in on a couple of points from some of these things that David talked about. So number one, we got to be satisfied. If we're going to try to move forward as an employer with an alcoholic, David already said we have a definite course of action. We're reading about it. That's the whole point of what we do here on Wednesdays. We got a definite course of action. It's right out of this book, right? This is our textbook. We get 12 steps and a whole bunch of stuff around it. Yeah, and then David said we're not doctors, we're not lawyers, we're not whatever. And even if you happen to be a doctor, you're not when you have your recovery hat on. We leave our titles at the door. The only person who's allowed to carry their title into recovery is me as a Jedi, because it's just a joke and I'm just being playful, right? You leave your doctor hat, wear that at the office, right? Do not bring that into recovery. We leave that at the outside. When I'm inside recovery and I'm working with an alcoholic or an addict in one of my fellowships, like David said, this is shoulder to shoulder. We do this together at the same level. I do not bring my outside skills. I don't bring my vocation into my avocation. Do not do that. Again, don't do it because it's a violation of the spirit of the traditions, but also don't do it from a liability perspective. The world is very different these days, guys. I talked about inappropriate stuff in the workplace, and it's just things that I take. Listen, a guy calls me and he's wasted and he needs help. I'll go and I'll pick him up. Well, I'll go and see what sort of shape he's in. If he's in bad shape, I'll be like, dude, do you want me to take you to the ER? Because I've done this. I'm not. It's gone are the days of bringing a guy back to your home and giving him tapering him with vodka till you get him sober. Not these days, guys. He falls and breaks his leg, and he's gonna sue you and your family. It's like this is why we have treatment centers and detoxes and emergency rooms. ERs are not going to turn guys away, at least not in this country. And I'm sure in Canada, same thing. UK, similar system as Canada, right? They're not going to turn these people away. Let the professionals be professionals. Sober them up, and then, like David said, go back the next day. When they're all wrong out and wired, coming off it. But it's okay. Several times in the book, it talks about seeing a newcomer when he's jittery. It's a good time. He's feeling it, right? This is a perfect example of how individually how we can cooperate with the professional community. And yeah, the man's going to fare better if placed in such physical condition. I guess I've had this happen, and I've had some sponsees call me sometimes and say, man, the guy I'm trying to work with keeps drinking. Should I keep taking him through the steps? And I'm like, boy, there's sort of different schools of thought on this, but like if I'm just talking to talk and the guy's stoned or buzzed or he's coming down or off something, is he really retaining anything that we're talking about? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, like the beginning, the solution, when my solution for alcohol is no longer an option, my next solution is to white knuckle until I get a spiritual awakening. I don't know any other way. I got to hang on at the beginning until I get better through God. Right. So I don't think that can happen while somebody's in and out, drinking, drugging, And then this is really about, the employer, if you propose such a procedure, so to go into detox or something. And if you advance the cost of treatment, so through work, then you get to deduct it from the payroll later. Again, today's very different. We have all these wonderful programs through many businesses, right? Employee assisted programs and things like this. So people can get the help they need. Thank God. All right, we're 1 minute to the hour. Perfect spot to wrap it up.